Murders often send a chill down our spines. Some assassins don't just intend to kill people. For these brutal criminals, simple death isn't enough. From serial killers to celebrity victims, some sensational murder cases capture our collective imagination and won't let go. In today's episode, we're digging in some of the rotten coffins covering the most dreadful torture murders that'll leave you frozen. Let's begin. At number 10, the murder of Pai Xiao Yen. The 17-year-old Pai Xiao Yen missing on her way back from school on April 14, 1997. Later on that day, her family received a brutal ransom note demanding $5 million. The note also had a picture of a partially nude Xiao Yen, along with pieces of her fingers. Irresponsible Taiwanese media and journalists made it even more difficult for the family. Even before a decision regarding the actions to the ransom demands were made, the media started printing stories about the kidnapping. Even the 12-day media blackout on the case was not respected, which made it obvious to the kidnappers that the police had been informed of the ransom note. After 11 days after the kidnapping, Taiwanese police captured 3 accomplices after a series of shootouts, but the masterbrain of the abduction slipped away. After 4 days, Yen's mutilated body, which was weighed down using barbells, was found in a drainage trench outside Taipei. From the medical report, it was found that Xiao Yen was reportedly raped and she died after being strangled to death by one of her kidnappers. Number 9. The murder of Jordan Babish and Jacob Cutler. During the scorching heat of the summer of 2012, crab hunters in Detroit came across 2 decomposing bodies of 17-year-old Jordan Babish and 18-year-old Jacob Cutler. Upon further investigations, police later learned that Babish and Cutler had journeyed to Detroit to purchase drugs 5 days before their bodies were discovered. Rather than purchasing drugs, both of them were made to strip down to their underwear and were shot execution style. Soon, 25-year-old Young and his 24-year-old friend, Philando Hunter, were charged with the murders. 2 eyewitnesses, Brandon Hall and his girlfriend, Stephanie Seawright, reported that they saw them forcefully stripping Babish and Cutler. Hunter and Young forced both teens to their knees, robbed them, and then struck both in the back of the head with a hunting rifle. Moving on to the next one, the murder of Jennifer Doherty. The mentally disabled 30-year-old lady who lived in the small town of Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania, never bothered anyone. She didn't even have many friends. Unfortunately, the people she did consider friends injured her for 36 hours and subjected her to one of the most gruesome deaths in American history. According to one of the suspects, Melvin Knight, the ordeal began when Doherty began playfully flirting with 23-year-old Ricky Smirns. Ricky's girlfriend, Angela Marinucci, and Knight's pregnant girlfriend, Amber Maidinger, didn't take this well, which made Maidinger smash Doherty's head to the wall. This led to even more violence, where Marinucci and Smirns hit Doherty with a crutch, while Maidinger kicked and stomped on Doherty's stomach. The injured Doherty was forced to ingest vegetable oil, urine, feces, laundry detergent, and several cooking spices. She was eventually killed after several people in the group took turns stabbing her. Number 7. The murder of Yana, Cajun. Blake Leibel, graphic novelist and film producer, came from a background swimming in wealth and privilege. The relationship between Leibel and Ukrainian-born model Yana Cajun began to sour when the engaged couple had their daughter. Just a few weeks after the birth, Leibel was furious that Cajun was neglecting him and the newborn child. His paranoid rage first burned his mother-in-law, Olga. On May 26, 2016, the LA cops engaged in a tense standoff with Leibel at the couple's apartment. After being inside the apartment, Leibel was found along with a fully naked corpse of her body. A piece of her skin was also found in her bed. Blake Leibel was convicted of first-degree murder, torture, and aggravated mayhem, and was sentenced to life in prison on June 26, 2018. Number 6. The murder of Stephanie Roper. Stephanie Roper, a 22-year-old undergraduate at Maryland's Frostburg State University, incurred a car breakdown on a rural stretch of highway. 2 men, Jack Ronald Jones and Jerry Lee Beatty, stopped and offered to help her, but kidnapped her and took her to an abandoned house in St. Mary's County. There, Roper was brutally beaten and raped without mercy. Fearing that she would recognize them, Jones and Beatty fractured Roper's skull and then fired the fatal shot that killed her. It didn't take the police much time to arrest the suspects, as Beatty made it easy by bragging about his exploits. Both men were charged with felony murder and were convicted and given 2 concurrent life sentences with the possibility of parole after 12 years. Number 5. The murder of Kellyanne Bates. On April 16, 1996, 17-year-old Ann Bates finally died after suffering severe torture for 4 weeks. Unfortunately, her torturer was her lover, 48-year-old James Patterson Smith, who drowned her in the bathtub. It all began when Ann was just 14 years old. Bates' friends began noticing that their once active friend had grown withdrawn. Finally, in November 1995, Bates moved in with Smith at the man's house on Furnivall Road in Gorton, England. Bates' parents, who had only recently met Smith, strictly disapproved of the move, as Smith was unemployed and showed very little interest to get a job. Little did they know that Smith had a history of abusing women. Bates' corpse contained more than 150 wounds. She had been starved for 2 weeks, and she had been repeatedly tied to a radiator by her hair. Despite all the evidence, Smith tried to defend himself by expressing that he was the real victim. The court didn't buy this, and Smith was sentenced to life imprisonment. At number 4, the murder of Andrew Gardner. In 2009, 35-year-old Andrew Gardner experienced one of the most gruesome deaths at the hand of his partner, Claire Nichols, her brother, Simon Nichols, and her on-off lover, Steve Martin, at the house they shared in England. Andrew was subjected to weeks of appalling abuse and degradation, and out of the injuries he had, 120 of them were the most severe ones. Law enforcement and paramedics were called to the house just after midnight on the 13th of March, where Gardner was found dead on the floor. Upon investigation, it was found that crude abuse was written on his body in nail polish. Boiling water had been poured over his feet and scorched with a cigar lighter. He was even forced to sleep like a dog on newspapers and not allowed on the sofa or bed. At number 3, the murder of Shannon Christian and Christopher Newsom. On January 6, 2007, Shannon Christian and her boyfriend, Christopher Newsom, were minding their own business when the couple was abducted from the Washington Ridge apartment complex in Knoxville. Hours after Christian and Newsom vanished, Newsom's body was found near some railroad tracks in East Knoxville after being raped repeatedly before being shot execution style. Newsom's corpse was found with the sock stuffed in his mouth, his ankles bound with his own belt, and his hands tied behind his back. He was forced to walk barefoot while he was shot from the back. Apart from being raped orally, vaginally, and rectally, Christian had her genitals mutilated and was forced to ingest the bleach. Number 2. The murder of Sylvia Likens. The murder of Sylvia Likens in 1965 is undoubtedly the most famous torture murder of the 20th century. It all began when 6-year-old Sylvia and her handicapped sister Jenny were assigned to the care of Gertrude Baniszewski. After 2 weeks, Gertrude began accusing Sylvia of stealing food and having sexual intercourse with boys. Several other boys came to the house just to beat up poor Sylvia. A boy named Coy Hubbard used to pick his judo background to pick up Sylvia and throw her down on the concrete floor. Gertrude's torture of Sylvia was the cruelest. He forced her to stay naked in front of other teenagers and asked Sylvia to insert a Pepsi bottle into her vagina. After the constant beating, starving, and torturing, Sylvia died on October 26, 1965. Finally, the most horrendous murder on our list is the murder of Junco Furuta. Junco Furuta was a pretty 16-year-old schoolgirl who attended high school in Misato of Japan. By all accounts, she was a straight-laced young girl who did not drink or smoke and rarely went to parties. On November 25, 1988, Junco was kidnapped by 4 boys: Miyano, Nobuharu Minato, Kamisaku Joe, and Yasushi Watanabe, who took her to a house in the Ayase district of Tokyo. For 44 days, the boys sodomized, raped, and brutalized Furuta. Each claimed to have raped her 400 times. She was burned with cigarettes, removed her nipples with a pair of pliers, and forced hot bulbs into her vagina. They even placed lit fireworks in her mouth, ears, and anus, and even dropped weights on her. After being really close to escaping once, Furuta died on January 4, 1989, when she was set ablaze by the 4 teenagers. The torture of Junco Furuta was well known in the neighborhood, but everyone, including the parents of the boys, kept silent as they were afraid of their own children. With that, we've come to the close of today's video. If you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel with post notifications to not miss out on any of our videos. See you in the next video. Until then, adios.